Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with Technology Executives Club, and welcome here, which is the Technology Executives Review video show and podcast. Again, I'm your host, Alex Jarett, founder of Technology Executives Club, and we publish Technology Executives Review. Happy to do so. Watch all of our videos on our website, Technology Executives Club, and don't forget to listen to this podcast called Technology Executives Review at either Apple or Spotify. And that's where we have them. And today's topic is a keynote panel on data strategy. With me today are my two esteemed guests. First, Prabir Chatterjee, Chief Technology Officer at SPAAtech. Hi, Prabir.
Hi, Alex.
Good to see you. And the second is Tom Drez. He's on the board of advisors at SPAAtech and the former CIO of Christian Brothers. Hi, Tom.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks.
Glad to have you here. You know, this is a topic that I know is near and dear to both your hearts, but especially to you, Prabir, because prior to this engagement as CTO of SPAAtech, you were head of data for Spencer's, which everybody knows is Spencer's Gifts. We're recording this in the fall that they have Spirit Halloween. It's the biggest pop-up store in North America, and everybody knows this. Everybody in the U.S. is taking their kids to this thing. And you were in charge of the data for that company too. So congrats on that. And before that service. So I know this is a great topic. And listen, with AI, prevalent, everybody is waking up to, oh my God, where's our data? How's our data doing? So data's back. And so what we're gonna do is I've got a series of questions that actually, truth be told, Prabir helped with because his area. And so we're just going to walk through them, have you guys give us the answers. Don't feel like you have to answer each sub-question. Just pick one or general topic that makes sense for you. And obviously, this is for mid-market, large mid-market, and enterprise companies that we're talking about. And both of you have been involved with all of those. So let's start with the first one, alignment with business objectives. How can organizations ensure their data strategy is closely aligned with their overall business objectives? And second one's just a derivative. What are the challenges with maintaining that alignment? So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
All right. Well, I'll jump in.
Great.
So I think we've talked about corporate strategies in the past, and if you look at any company could be small to medium to large, they're probably divided by business unit, and in the past, that's worked well. I suppose I don't want to jump around here a little bit too much, but we're talking about data strategy here. This is an evolution from, what was more important maybe even 10 years ago was the nuts and bolts infrastructure, how a company was put together, how their plumbing worked, the software solutions that they chose. And it was fine for an individual business unit to operate on its own, separate from another business unit within the same organization, even though they shared a customer, right? A customer might have bought from business unit A and also from B. Data was important back then, but it was still silo-based. I know we've had this conversation in the past, and it centers around for data strategy to be in alignment with, business or organizational objectives. Everything needs to come maybe full circle and be centralized, in my opinion. No longer is it enough for each business unit to operate as its own small to medium to even large size business. There must be somebody with the view of the big picture and then helps to put together the mechanics of that big picture, with the business units. But it's not, we don't want shadow data strategy within every business unit. We used to talk about shadow IT when it came to the nuts and bolts. Now we're talking about data strategy. There really can't be any shadow data strategy. It has to happen at the top.
That's interesting.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, there was a lot there to go through, but I'll focus on that last comment. Do you see a lot of companies doing this shadow data, either of you?
Yeah, go ahead, Prabir.
Yeah, no, I think I totally agree with Tom about at the top level has to be this data strategy. Because if you look at that, and all the business objectives is determined by the key business leaders, and that's rolled up to the top executives, right? Now, if we don't have the top level data strategy, then each of the individual business unit, they will operate on their own. And that's what the Tom is referring as a shadow data strategy. And what will happen is, as like the data in a shadow technology department or shadow IT department, they do have done their own, but they really never thought about that, how they can put their thoughts into the enterprise bottom line or enterprise strategy. The same thing is when this individual business unit, they do create their own data strategy, they will leave their own silo, which should never been mapped to the overall enterprise. And at the enterprise level, data decisions or any outcome which they think about at the CEO level or the board level, they would not be able to achieve that one in a quick and quicker fashion. That will be a constant challenge for running the shadow business, data strategy, and then assemble them together when it needs it. So it's a constant challenge that every company will be facing.
That's really interesting. I never really thought of it myself. Obviously you're a shadow IT, but I guess it makes sense. Unless you're really big and you're big enough that you have a chief data officer. If nobody's shepherding this thing, what you all are describing is bound to happen.
Absolutely, it is, especially in this multi-cloud world that we live in. It's easier to fall off the beaten path, or I guess never get on the beaten path, depending on how you want to look at it.
Prabir, I know when we spoke on I think it was your, both you gentlemen are members of our board of advisors, which is advisors to the community. You all are watching this for the first time. And Prabir, I remember we spoke on one of your interviews, and you talked about when you go into work with a new company, or now as a CTO helping companies, you like to interview the different heads of each business unit and functional unit to not only determine what data they need, but what they're putting out. Right? I imagine that ties into this conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly is the alignment which we need to assess. That every department or every business unit, they have the capacity to develop data for the company. So if you are in a product, let's say if you are in the manufacturing product line, you developing data on department a lot of different ways. If you are a person's department who is handling mainly the marketing materials, so you are basically generating a lot of contents or a lot of data point for the company. So these are all your own area of the information. So when you are talking, when you'll be talking to the individual business leaders, they are the best champion of their own data, right? They are the champion of data, what the data is and how the data is they are generating it. But when it comes to whether these two, three, four, five different business leaders, how they will be sharing their information and what the value they're putting into the overall enterprise, and that's the point is they are lacking, and that's what the people like us is coming into play, and having that bridge built through the dialogue, through the questions answered, and how it is effective to the company's business objectives. And that's what the real alignment will be happening.
So who usually initiates this kind of effort? Is it the CIO, or is it the CEO or the CFO, or I guess it depends on the company. But where do you see this kind of effort initiated where somebody wakes up and says, hey, we really need to have a data strategy? Who are these people?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the size of the company, just like you said, Alex. In a small to medium sized company, that can start with the CIO.
Yeah.
There was something Prabir just said that's important. Certainly business units, they know their data. They're responsible for their data.
Yeah.
Some of what I was saying in my opening remarks were, the business units, you're still going to have a business unit leader that's focused on the results of their business unit, but they must stress and emphasize the dotted line connections that the people in that business unit have to the corporate cross-divisional teams, centralized data strategy, centralized cybersecurity, enterprise risk management, IT risk management. No longer can a business unit totally live in its own silo. So the leader of a business unit must stress the connections to those other important resources across the company, and hold their staff accountable to that when it comes to be review time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. All right, Prabir, you want to add anything in this one?
No, I would only say it depends on the size of the company, and a lot of times it eventually we end up with the CIO's shoulder to execute and to come up with a plan. But CIO cannot do that without having a complete buy-in from all the other leaders. So that means it can be initiated from any of the business leaders, but eventually it is a joint effort between all business leaders, including the CIO. CIO is no longer just a separate business leader. They are part of the business leader team.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. Well, that's great. All right, well, let's move to the next one. So we're talking about the different leaders. Let's talk about leadership and governance. And what role, it actually ties real well with your answers. What role does executive leadership play in driving effective data governance across an organization? And I'll just do the second one. How can companies establish that strong governance framework that balances data accessibility with control and security?
I think I kind of just answered those questions with my last response.
Well, what was that again for this segment, for this short segment?
I can help Tom on this. If you think that, I think the key things is that those leaders, as they are, I'm sure that they will be at some point they'll be saying, okay, hey, I own this data, but I don't own that data of a other business unit. So then they will start talking about how we can get these data available for each department. So that means there it comes to a rules, policies, for how they collaborate, how those kind of things they will start talking about, building it, and that's the executives would be doing it when they would be looking into a enterprise capability through their governance. So then they will start talking about how we can build the policies around how the data will be used between different departments and how they will be sharing with, which one is confidential, which one is not confidential, which one is will be helpful for our customers. So those policies and frameworks and different accountability of their data would be a key roles or key strategy the executive leadership should play when they will come to a governance.
Okay, great. You want to add something to that, Tom?
Yeah, sure. I kind of touched on it, but I think it's important. Most organizations already have some form of centralized risk management. It may not, even if it's not a full-blown enterprise risk management function, at a minimum, they probably have at least an IT risk management function, and it's very important for all business units within a company to buy into that and stay connected to that. That's the only way that you're going to balance data accessibility with control and security, by following, a single framework that's provided by those areas.
Okay, great. So we're going to move past governance, into a different topic, data-driven decision-making. And how can organizations create a culture that embraces this data-driven decision-making at all levels? And what are some of those key challenges? So in making that happen? And Prabir, I'm gonna lead with you on this one, because again, in one of our past interviews, you really were passionate about the fact that data is a data-driven culture. You kept saying the phrase data-driven culture, where top companies really have a culture of being more data-driven. So what did you mean by that? And how does that sort of tie into this phrase of data-driven decision-making?
Yes, I did mention that one. I think this is probably a couple of times I give an example of any macro or microeconomics which you look at and any decision they make. It's all data driven.
Mm-hmm.
We're still our federal government, Treasury Department. They're still looking at all the data, collecting the information before they can determine whether they will be raising or basically cutting the interest rate at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
In enterprise, the same thing. If the enterprise wants to do the making real decisions on whether they want to launch a different product or whether they want to cannibalize one of the product or whether they want to do improve their supply chain processes, they would be doing on what basis? They need to have a reference, a benchmarking data point, and then constantly going through the continuous improvement process through the data, what the data they will be collecting it. So any decisions which company will be making at some point of time, they are collecting those data. And if you look at even in the typical the program and project management, and there you see that there's an input and then output, right? The input is all data and the output is going out data, which will effectively going through the next flow of the process, which they will look at that how they will efficiently working on it. That's what I meant for it. If the company has to be more efficient and has to improve their operational excellence, improve their customer satisfactions, they really need to make the call or make the decision on the data which they are having it, or they can take the help from other data point or data which is external influence to them. So everything comes to a accessing data and using the data to make the final decisions on every aspect of their company activities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do you create this sort of data-driven culture? How does that happen internally?
Culture is always tough, right? The key culture, which there's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could create a cross-functional team between the different departments and having those departments talk each other. What are the key standard data is across the organizations? Everybody is using it. It can be done through the constant dialogue and training and teaching to the individual. There is one of the things which it comes into in this particular data-driven decision-making idea is understanding the data. So that means that's in a buzzword is called data democratizations. So getting the data in front of everyone to know what is the data means, what's the value of the company, how they will be nurturing it, how they will be keeping it, how they will be processing it, and have that knowledge spread across the organization. Just like in cybersecurity, same thing. Hey, when you are opening up your email, make sure that this email is authentic, right? And all this training and things. Same thing you need to do. Enterprise needs to do also on the data side. That what data how the data will be using it. So that either through the training process or through the cross-functional team or group, they do that. There's various ways you can do that. It's culture is built is part of the just like in HR build a culture. Similarly, we have to make the data-driven culture. Now the questions will be coming in. Who will be driver of the culture, which you asked me before?
Yeah.
Right. So a driver can be CIO and his team, or it can be I would say that normally it should be coming in on the chief operating officers in that area, right? So there's various ways you can make that cultural initiative.
One of the things I get, Tom, I just wanted one more follow-up with Prabir. One of the things I also recall is just in having people understand what you mentioned, having them understand what the data actually means. I remember you telling me that sometimes people can look at the same data and have completely different interpretations of what it means, or they're producing similar numbers but different.
Yeah, just one of the lot of common areas like costing.
Mm-hmm.
When they create a product costing, right? Some department they talk about the discount, and other department they call rebate,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the same meaning. And then when it comes to finance, they say, okay, hey, when you do calculate the tax, I will be calculating tax with the discount.
Mm-hmm.
And then after creating the final price, then we'll discount that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in other department, they will say, okay, rebate time, we do not calculate the tax on the rebate. So these are the things is rebate, tax, discount, they're all synonymous and quite same, but the way the people are using it is different. So that understanding should be common across the organizations.
Yeah, I could see how this would take time. So Tom, what do you've done it on the operational side as well.
Yep.
And you've talked about this at some of our conferences previously. So what was your experience in terms of helping Christian Brothers and other companies start to actually use the data to make decisions versus just intuition, which I don't knock intuition, but I think well-informed intuition is always better.
Sure. I think the most important part of that first question is, how can organizations create a culture? You can stop there.
Yeah.
In this particular case, we're talking about that truly embraces data-driven decision making, or it could be something else. But anytime you're going to create a culture within an organization, that is not necessarily easy. It totally depends on the organization and the management and staff at all levels of an organization. But if you want to create a culture that embraces data-driven decision making, it's going to be the same as creating any other culture within an organization. And that is not necessarily going to be an easy thing, and it has to start at the top, and it has to carry down through all levels within the organization, and everybody has to be accountable to everybody else to ensure that everybody stays on track for the culture. The bigger the company, the more layers and levels, and things can get lost in translation. But a company has to consciously decide what they want their culture to be. And the top level management has to buy into that. Then they have to agree to carry that through then to the next level of management. And it's going to be that next level of management where an organization is going to connect into all those cross-divisional teams. So this is very, very important. But some companies may say, oh, we have a culture of this, but they don't put the actions behind it to back it up. So it seems easy. It can be hard, but you just have to make that decision first and then start to carry that through in everything that you do. And that applies for any culture. You just asked about key challenges in transitioning from intuition-based to data-driven decisions. That's another interesting question. My take on that might be that they may not be making intuition-based decisions, but are they working with the right data? We're talking about data strategy here, right?
That's what Prabir always talks about,
Right? So if we've got an enterprise and you've got multiple business units, sure, if you've got a business unit that only has one set of data, they're the masters of that data. But sometimes there's copies of enterprise data floating around the entire enterprise. Only one of those data sets is going to be the master gold copy. So who is maintaining that? And a business unit should not take a master gold copy of data, and then edit that, and you're ending up with multiple copies. And who is making decisions on this data, right? You may be making decisions based on the wrong data. I think a lot of organizations now, it's very rare that people are making just intuition-based decisions. I think, in my experience, there is some level of data-driven decisions, some type of quantitative or qualitative analysis being done, but is it the right data? That might be a better question to ask. And again, we're going to go back to that theme, the culture, the centralization carried down throughout the organization. Sounds easy for me to say, but I know in practice it's much harder than that.
That's both your answers are very insightful, and it kind of reminds me. I think it's what is Jeff Bezos. How he has created his culture when they do meetings. Y'all read about that? When they do meetings, you have to come to the table with a written one-pager, and everybody has to read it for 10 minutes before they discuss it. And it's almost, you talk about driving a culture. It sounds like it's almost got to be the same kind of thing where it's top down, all the execs agree, and they reinforce, are we looking at all the data? Is this the right data? What does this other group say? So they don't just take the first thing for granted and just make a decision. They dig a little. And that seems to me like a culture issue.
Sure. Well, it's like when we Google something, just because we found it on the internet doesn't make it true.
Wait, is that right? Shoot. Thank you. Just saved me from a lot of hassle.
Sure.
Wait, but if it's ChatGPT, it's okay.
Right there you go. Right.
Thank you. There's a new one I've been using called Ask AI. It's really good. All right, let's move on. Data security and compliance. Great topic. I know that, Tom, you're pretty heavy in this one also.
Right.
What securities can organizations adopt to ensure robust data security while meeting regulatory compliance requirements? And how can companies stay ahead of evolving data privacy regulations and avoid costly breaches?
Data security and compliance is right up my alley, as you know. I am a big proponent of the team-based approach for an organization. So again, that's going to mean an enterprise risk management team approach or IT risk management team approach. So definitely that will work. And that type of approach for ERM or just IT risk management in general can easily work and plug into any business unit that is product or service oriented. And that those teams will have the interests of the business unit and the enterprise, in mind, without reinventing any wheels at the business unit level. So that's good. And companies have, for the large part, I think, focused on that type of approach for at least cybersecurity in general and compliance, where appropriate. Data security kind of falls under that as well. I don't think you're going to really see much shadow data security taking place within a business unit. I think they would see that that's probably outside of their scope or the scope of their silo, and they're going to want that type of service from the enterprise, which is good. How can companies stay ahead of evolving data privacy regulations and avoid costly breaches? And that could be for any regulations, not just data privacy necessarily, but I think first and foremost, an organization's people, they have to get out. They have to get outside of the organization. Every day you can attend a cybersecurity, IT risk management, privacy, data breaches, incident response. You can attend one of those conferences every day somewhere, sometimes multiple days somewhere. So you got to get out of your organization, whether you're working at home or you're working in an office. Get out from behind your desk, find these conferences, attend them. There's plenty of great ones. And then you're going to meet people. Maybe this being post-pandemic and looking at the different ages of employees and how they grew up during the pandemic. People have to get out. They have to meet people. They have to make connections. They have to get involved in peer groups or make a peer group for whatever it is that they're looking for. And then those are the teams. Those are the people. That'll be the gift that keeps on giving day after day after day, because nobody should be in this alone. So you've got to get out there. The other part of this is we've talked about outsourcing everywhere possible. You do it on the cybersecurity side. I mean, these days, if you want to keep up with, the threat actors that are out there, No organization can do that on their own. You've got to partner with one or more of the security providers that are out there and count on them to continually be upping their game to protect your organization and all of their customers. So you've got to outsource. You've got to stay on top of this. And when you outsource, you're going to get all the updates. You're going to get everything that they're watching for. But you have to do everything that you possibly can to stay current. It's no longer, the old days where you can put in any system, and just kind of let it sit. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's no longer the case. Just look at Microsoft Windows. You're getting patches at least every month and priority patches sometimes in between. So you can't do that anymore. You need a strategy where you're going to stay continually up to date. And that works for data privacy regulations and anything else.
That's great. I like the idea of getting out of your element and meeting people to build your network to help you with this, because you can read verbatim online, but actually talking to other people about how they're handling things is going to be invaluable. So that's great advice. Prabir?
Yeah, I think Tom is expert in this area, right? He has gone through these things.
Yeah,
a couple of things has come to my mind when it comes to in data security. If you look at that, these days all the news is coming in, they don't talk about that, whether it is a network breach or whether they talk about any other breach or anything like that. They talk about the data breach.
Yeah.
So it's a natural term that when something is breaking the data, right, in some form. These days, I believe the CISO or other companies, when they are creating their control for different measurements, creating their control lists and policy framework, they have to now add on all the controls related to data, because more and more all different compliance rules and policies are coming in, like GDPR came in, the CCPA came in, and all those things came in. And they dictate some of the control has to include within your organization security policy and process. So data controls is now becoming the policy. And the next things to be coming in, just like and Tom mentioned about, you have to keep up with the different policies and you need to partner with threat actors and other things. The same thing is applicable for data side as well. As you know now, with the great invention of generative AI, and how the data is in your organizations is being used on different models. And that's a really challenge for security people to define the policies, access policies, and usage policies across the organization. So the increasing the different controls you'll be seeing in these days, a lot of companies will start putting in place called data protection officers within the CISO. If there is possible that big companies, they will even create a role called data protection officers on top of the CISO to do those kind of policies and framework established and keep maintaining it. That's the most important. You can create the policies and control, but if you do not have the continuous audit on those controls on a regular basis, then you will be getting into situations where you probably don't know where the leaks is coming.
Makes sense. Yeah, I interviewed somebody else a few weeks ago. They're also a cybersecurity expert, Tom, like yourself, and they were promoting the zero trust framework.
Right.
And basically saying the old doctrine of trust but verify is no longer the framework. It's got to be don't trust and verify. And they were also saying it's not something you buy. You can buy point solutions and stuff, but it's just changing that mindset and then having a strategy around it. It was very interesting, and they talked about different it's not just people and users, but any access point.
Yeah, it's what's happened is, there used to be a time where we would a new employee comes into an organization, you give them a user profile. It's based on, maybe their particular role or somebody else's role. And really, I think we're with a zero trust, we kind of moving more towards what I call the Department of Defense standard. And a new employee starts with access to nothing. And they must be given specific access to everything that they need to do their job. No more blanket authorizations. No more saying, give this new person, Joe, all the same permissions that Sally had.
Yeah.
There's not even any way probably these days in this multi-cloud world that we live in to be able to know all the permissions that Sally had to be able to give them to Joe anyway. But with the zero trust, to me, that's the Department of Defense model. Everybody starts with nothing. You can only give them what they need to have access to do their particular job function. And so that's what zero trust is. You're right. It's a concept. A lot of your security providers will be saying, I can sell you zero trust.
You can't buy that.
Right. That's right. So, but you have to, that's the main idea behind that. And I do believe that that's how everybody has to work. And then what's really happening, you mentioned the trust but verify.
Yeah.
You're just a regular employee. Here I've got a laptop here, an iPad there, an iPhone here, and another computer over here. I need to be constantly all day long or all night long. My systems, my devices, I'm kind of automatically authenticating into the system or systems all day long as I go. It's not like, well, I can log in once at 8 a.m. and now I have access to, everything in the kingdom, until I log out. All these devices are in and out, but depending on when you go to access something, your device, your profile should be authenticating at that time. Now, hopefully it's a transparent process.
That's interesting.
It's a transparent process, right? Because, no longer are employees confined even to four walls and a roof. I could be anywhere, and anybody, you need to constantly be re-authenticating into the network and whatever it is you're looking to access.
Yeah, that's almost a good tip just for anyone just watching this.
Mm-hmm.
For your main apps, your banking, whatever, just set it to re-authenticate every single time you get in.
Right. Well, and I think that is happening, especially with your financial institutions, where they're under attack all day, every day, because
they know.
the bad guys want money.
Yeah.
So they know, and usually, it does trickle down. But I think what's happened in the last few years is things trickle down faster and faster from those institutions that have to be on the bleeding edge. You know, 5 years ago, I would always say, in some where I've worked, and we didn't always need to be bleeding edge. We needed to be leading edge.
Yeah, I've heard you say that. Yeah.
And there was a gap, from being bleeding edge to leading edge in terms of time and money. These days, I think that's kind of disappearing, especially as it relates to cyber, because every organization needs the tools that are constantly evolving, the tools that are evolving with AI to help an organization. Organizations need to be on top of this stuff real time. And to do that, you have to be using near leading edge solutions, because the bad guys are.
Yeah, they sure are. Prabir, are you good on this one? Or you want to add something?
No, I think Tom is expert on this area. I'm definitely agreeing on all the things which he said.
Okay.
Zero trust, it's a myth, right? To build the zero trust, you have to have all the supporting framework around that.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Okay, let's move on. Now, I've heard both of you talk about this before. Talent and skills development. What are the essential skills needed for building a high-performing data team? And how can companies attract and retain such talent? And how can organizations upskill existing employees to meet the growing demand for data literacy? It seems to me like this is a really hot area, especially with the movement towards more AI than previous. So Prabir, I'm going to let you go with this one first, since this is really one of your top areas.
Yeah.
And you have some unique solutions for this for people, I believe.
Yeah, I think this answers again would be going to be, it depends, and how the way the top leadership is looking at to utilize their data capability. If they just thinking about somebody who be coming and they have some information and creating some report. So they might be needing some specific tools which they are using it. But as a enterprise, if they want to really create a robust data team and utilizing all the modern technology, and also which includes the real-time analytic capabilities and the prediction capabilities, those require a certain level of skill sets, and that starts with traditional programming skill set, which is program like Python, R, and that type of skill, and then understanding of the data movement technologies, and that in a lot of companies is nowadays they're putting together in their package. Like for example, Microsoft, they build their own data pipeline or data movement tools. They call sometimes the Azure Data Factory, sometimes they call the regular factories. So those tools, there is hundreds of data integration tools available in the market. So have at least one or two experts in their group of the people who is using in the specific set of tools, right? Then similarly, understanding of database skills, whichever database they are using it. It can be a multi layer processing tools or very large database tools, or in the big data platform or cloud-based data platform, any of these areas. So they can do that type of skills as well. From the generative AI, I would at this point I would say this best approach would be to instead of hiring those specific skill set within the organizations, let's partner with the other companies and bring that one, because that area is so much fluid at this point. And to realizations of your investment on those skill set would be worth testing first before you actually hire. So engaging with the partners and getting those tools, because those is every day changing it. The models, customized large language models, and different types of framework coming up every day, and how it is applicable in your systems. That I would recommend at this point to have a skill from outside for a test before you hire, unless you have billions of dollars in the IT budget, you can do that easily.
That all makes sense. So, Tom, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Well, clearly, Prabir is the expert in this area.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting question because we can definitely come at this from two directions, right? One, Prabir as the provider, and me as the consumer. I've always been a proponent of buy instead of build when it comes to software solutions, and I think this and for in any area as well where I don't have a skill set in-house or on staff. So in this particular case, I don't think organizations are very skilled in what we're talking about and what we're looking for here. So I would outsource. I recommend always try before you buy and outsource. And if you find you reach a point where there's certain skills you want to bring in-house, certainly you can do that when you think the economics make sense to do so. But for an organization to ramp up on all the skills that, let's say, are the next step up over report writing or visual report writing or extract, transform, and load. Organizations need to have those skills on staff for sure. But I think as you step up, and when you look at the overall enterprise and everything we've been talking about the last 45 minutes, that's not easy for an organization to create job descriptions, go outside, find people to fill those, and then kind of start from scratch. It makes more sense to to me to buy instead of build, and that means finding a good partner and outsourcing, and then bringing them in to help you. It could be to identify gaps, first of all, where they can plug in and best help an enterprise. And then it could be that from that company that you outsource to, you may set up an arrangement where you're going to try before you buy, and maybe at a certain point, after an initial engagement, you may want to bring on a consultant as a full-time employee. You might find that would work for you. Or you may say, you know what, this is just one of those skill sets that seems better to leave it outsourced. That firm that you outsource to, that team that you outsource to, this is their specialty. This is, they're going to stay current on everything that is happening in the data strategy and analytics space, and that saves you from having to invest in doing that too for your own staff. So this is one of those areas where I don't think this is second hat to every organization, and I think it behooves every organization to consider the outsourcing first, and then at some point consider maybe pulling some skills in-house, but not necessarily, if that makes sense.
Yeah, all that makes sense. I remember when I'll say a couple things about that, and then we'll go. I got a question for Prabir, a follow-up question. So I remember when I first met you, I came out and had lunch. You remember that? We had lunch when you were at Christian Brothers, and I really appreciated that. And you said, this is what we do with all our partners. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I know you really cultivate that. And one thing that you told me back then was you always teamed up with colleges and things like that to always get people. Right. But it seems to me in an area that's really in high demand, that's more advanced, the model that you're describing where you buy the help does make a lot of sense. Prabir, you have an interesting model that you've talked about before. You call it the embedded team strategy that can actually help people with this problem. So why don't you share how what the problem was that you saw and how you came about that and how that works?
I think that Tom has touched upon this, right? This outsourcing of the skills, which is comparatively foreign to the organization, is always a wise idea, right? You give the outsourcing company, because they are the experts, they come in, they do work for you and implement it. Because when you are doing that one, either you have two situations, either you do not have anything, you are completely bringing new to implement that, or you have something and you are getting through the technical debt and coming into new. So that means at 100% sure that you do not have the skill set within your organizations. You have to build that skill set. And going to outside, the two approach one is you give the outside, you tell them what to do, and they come in, implement it, and they walk out, right? And then you do it. So skills goes outside, you engage outsourcing companies, and now as a leader, you need to also think about that technology is not going away from your organizations. It's just coming in. It stays there for a longer period of time, unless some other technology replaces that. So that means you have to maintain that technology in your organization. So after buying, now you are in the maintaining mode. So that means you have to build your capability. The model which I was talking about is start from the beginning. When you are buying it, build that model. So buying time, this high skill set people would be living with you, and instead of having a separate training or different workshops and skill development, all these things, let your team who is not skilled work alongside with them together with the embedded model, and they learn through their project implementation. So that way they will be productive once your outsourcing company walked out the door.
So the shared this embedded team concept, what I'm hearing is that you put somebody in the team, like Tom said, you buy the help, but you use that embedded team member, they stay to help coexist with your team members to train them that way.
Yeah, I would not say that train that way. I was saying that it automatically comes.
It happens.
It happens naturally.
Naturally. And that's a better model than more that abrupt start and stop. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, especially in the data area, which is where you all are covering. Interesting. Well, let's segue to the last topic. You know, I'll read it, but then I'll add something here. I'll just say it. We all heard over and over again, the companies that create the best customer experiences are going to be the ones that continue to succeed. And so customer-centric data seems to be one of the core, foundations of making that happen. So how can companies leverage customer data to enhance the customer experience while maintaining privacy and trust? And what are some of the best practices for doing so in a way that drives business growth? I'm not talking about public sector companies, obviously, but you could apply it there. They still have to support their citizens. So who wants to handle this one? Because this is obviously a pretty important question.
I'll jump in. I'll start.
Yeah.
All right. So in the provision of customer service, I think all customers have a view of the company or the enterprise that they're working with.
Yeah.
I think every company wants to be seen as a trusted advisor to their customers, but it's one thing to talk about it. You have to walk the talk, right?
Yeah.
So to be a trusted advisor, your customers have to see you collecting their data and being responsible with it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to see the company in the headlines. They don't want to see or find out that you're selling their data, especially if your privacy policy says you're not going to do that. So there's an image that a company is going to cultivate, and this is also going to start with culture at the top of the organization that's going to push through all of the employees within the organization. So the companies, I think it's not necessarily the service that you're providing or what you can do. You just have to focus on that culture, work towards being a trusted advisor, and not just talking about it, but walk that talk. Now, separately, like you just said in this question here, the key part is the second half of that sentence. What are the best practices for developing the customer-centric strategy that drives business growth? To a large degree, everybody within a company is in sales, whether or not
you may not think it, but you are, right?
Whether or not your job description or your title has sales in it. So companies that get good at customer service that provides an agent or a representative with a 360-degree view of a customer and all of the products and services that they use, and maybe more importantly, the products and services that they're not using that apply to them. So our systems these days should be smart enough to provide an agent or a representative with all of that information. So if I'm not buying widget B, but widget B doesn't even apply to me, the customer service agent shouldn't ask me. And they certainly shouldn't ask me something that I know is already in their system. Customers hate that, right? I know you already have this data about me somewhere. Don't tell me it's in another silo locked up somewhere. So customers that get good at providing customer service means they're providing all of this data, all of this information to their agents and their representatives, whether that be in the customer service function specifically, or any other employee within an organization that might have contact with a customer. Everybody should be able to pull this information up from the CRM system or whatever system that you're using where you pulled this all together, not just somebody who's taken call after call after call or email or whatever the work unit of customer service happens to be. So with that said, if a company's good at that, those people are upselling and cross-selling at the same time, and revenue is going to increase. But that's a cultural change. You know, it used to be if you were a customer service rep, your job was to handle that unit of work right in front of you. It really wasn't anything about cross-selling or upselling. But like I said, every employee, whether they know it or not, or like it or not, are in the sales function to some degree. So companies that are good at that and build that into their culture and provide that information, the data to their employees at the point of contact. And we know customers could come in, right, via the phone, email, text these days. I mean, the omni-channel is alive and well.
Yeah.
This current contact center technology is available to any size organization these days, not only the Fortune 100 companies like it used to be 10 years ago, and it's all cloud-based. So I only have one more point to make on this, and that's if a company is good at that, providing the data to the people who then can cross-sell and upsell, they can translate that also into all of those customers who only come in and transact online, because now you don't have a person necessarily, right? People want to get their customer service done 24/7, 365 with or without an agent. So you need companies that are good at this will be able to upsell and cross-sell to the customer when there is no person involved as well. That's something different.
You know, I think that was a great answer. And I've been talking to a lot of different people about a lot of different things. And one of the things that I heard recently was this phrase called customer success executive.
Yeah, they exist.
And I never heard of this before. And I met a fellow that had risen through the customer success ranks and was able to, at a number of companies, successfully create multipliers of their income. These are smaller companies, but the principle is the same. It's exactly what you're talking about, where they weren't the original seller they weren't the original rep or sales arm that brought the customer in. It was really a more advanced type of customer service, I guess I'll say it that way, where they really were there to help the customer have a better customer experience and upsell or cross-sell. That's their role. And it seems to me that, like you have said, having access to that data is the key to the whole thing. So they don't have to ask the same 20 questions the original rep did.
That's right. And not having access to it, having it put right in front of you.
Yeah. Like, hey, here's what the original problem is. We fixed this, and here's what they're talking about now, or here's what we're experiencing. That's really interesting, Tom. Prabir, how would you add to that?
I would say one simple things. If you think that your data is not having anywhere other than whom you are transact with, you're wrong. Because your data is everywhere. No matter how things, if you Google it in your name, right, you'll be getting the hundreds of hit of your name, and you will end up with some companies or they'll say, okay, here is Prabir Chatterjee and blah blah blah, and there is start. Here is the last 2 digits of a phone number, and then you say, okay, buy from me. I'll give the full details. So that means they have the data. Right? They have the data. So my point is that we just don't have to live in this world, think about that my information is not there and companies are not using it. I saw the other day there is a Facebook has a 2.2 billion users. So that means if all of these 2.2 billion people, what they are doing it every day, they have your information, right? Right? They exactly know what you do, what time you open up your, their applications, what time you do, what time you go function, what time you go to your dinner, everything they knows, right? So the point is that how the company internally use those data to take advantage of their product and services without jeopardizing that customer personal life. That would be the key.
That's really interesting.
I heard one of the few stories is one of my friend I was talking to. He was saying, I do not know. They are just tracking me. I said, no. So he's telling the story is he was flying to UK from Dubai, and then his flight got canceled, and there was a connecting flight from the UK airport to the USA. And he said, when we reached to the airport, since I have in UK, I got a text message from my, I'm not taking the name of the company, is text message saying, okay, hey, I know that your flight has got delayed, so you probably have to go to this hotel. So here is your, I'm sending you a driver.
That's from a different company or the same?
No,
it's not from the airline or something like that.
No, it's not from airlines. The normally, all these ride share companies which people use it, right?
Yeah.
The ride share company is sending him text exactly after 5 minutes he landed to that airport.
Wow.
So because the wave of B2B companies are there, and your information is already in the cloud, in their systems. So as a company, you building the trust with the customer is only way possible when you harmonize their informations without jeopardizing their personal life.
I really like that phrase. That's really interesting. I have to say, I'm a fan of dystopian movies. Reminds me of Minority Report. But I didn't interview somebody. I talked to somebody the other day, Prabir, and they're part of one of these fast-growing tech companies. And they're a data company. And their company, what they do is they pay you, they give you discounts on things you buy. And that's all they do. They just give you discounts on things that you buy. You've seen people advertise for these kind of companies. Like, hey, join this club and you get discounts. And what they're doing is you're giving them the rights to all your data in return for these discounts. It's exactly what you're saying. Facebook obviously has a lot of the stuff, unless you turn the things off or delete it. But you're right, Prabir. The data is out there. It's just one example. So if you're the CIO watching this now and you're like, or tech exec, maybe you're a chief AI officer, maybe chief digital officer, maybe chief innovation officer, all these titles, doesn't matter. Chief digital transformation officer. Does it start with the culture first? It seems to me it goes back to the other answer we were talking about the data, is that it's got to be a customer experience culture first. Tom, anything?
I don't think you can go wrong by being focused on the customer. Not at all.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great conversation. Would either of you want to add anything to this last one?
I think that's the key thing, right? Company's bottom line is the customer experience.
Yeah.
So if you keep your focus customer in the front as a target, and then you organize all of your policies and processes and training, culture, everything around the data inside, that will be the best way to go.
Yeah, I like that statement. That's a good quote for you, Prabir. I mean, and again, when you go in and work with somebody, I know that's part of what you do. I remember from our interview, that's part of what you do in your terms of your process, right? You find out what their overall strategy is, and you talk to the heads of each of the functional areas and departments to see how they're tying into that overall strategy. And that's how you help people create that plan. That's accurate, right? That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
That's great. Well, listen, both of you, Tom, Prabir, great job today. I learned a lot. And I know anybody watching this has learned a lot too. It's been a really good conversation. Any last additional thoughts on this overall topic that you want to add before I
No,
close
it's
it
been
out?
fun. Glad to be here. Thank you.
We can talk days and nights on this. So
Yeah, well, we
Thank you.
are. Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate both you. Thank you for being on the board of advisors, both of you, and sharing your wisdom with our community. It helps everybody. You know, as Tom said, we're all kind of in this together. I know when you were talking just on the cybersecurity
Right.
issue, you know, we are really all in this together. We're a shared economy, whether, you know, in our country and our allies, and it is important that we communicate with each other and help each other. So thank you guys for doing that. Your bit today. We appreciate that. So thank you. With that, let me close it out, and then we'll finalize this. So everybody, thanks for watching. We appreciate you and your time, spending the time or listening. You can watch all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. We also have a YouTube channel, by the way, Technology Executives Review. And you can listen to our podcast called Technology Executives Review. It's at Apple and Spotify. And while you're on our site, don't forget to join our free Insiders Club, which is basically a fancy word for our newsletter subscription. And you'll get all the updates on all the different videos and podcasts and everything else. And we're going to start adding some great insights on executive branding and things like that. And if you want to get involved and be a regular on our media network and interested in learning about our board of advisors and influence program, just reach out to me. The board of advisors is the board of advisors to the technology community. Go to our site, technologyexecutivesclub.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. And on the site, you can book a discovery call. Thank you for attending, guys. Prabir and Tom, thank you again. We appreciate you. And everybody, thanks for watching. I always like to close with, it's our honor to serve you and your team. Don't forget to visit us at technologyexecutivesclub.com for the about 20th time. We appreciate all of you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.